Okay, so yes, we are recording. It is in progress. Progress. Welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. Zuzana, right, I am going to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
Oh God. Oh, so for the English version, for English speakers, I always pronounce it Nemeckova. It's not the way
Nemeko
I pronounce
Nem
it, but yeah,
Nemeckova. Okay, Zuzana Nemeckova or Neverko.
Nemeckova. Nemeckova.
Okay, I'll just call you Zuzana for now, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? I've wanted to have you on for a while, and scheduling. I'm not great at scheduling, as everybody hears every episode. I tell everybody that, which is true, not just making it up. Yeah, so it's been a while. I've wanted to get you on for a while to sort of have a chat about what you do, and then this whole spring energy thing appeared in the trail running world. And I thought this would be like a golden opportunity to sort of have a chat with you and get your expert opinion on what's going on and how it affects how we view energy gels and stuff over here. Because obviously people, it's an American company, but people use it over here. There's quite a few people that I've been talking to that use it. But before we chat about that, then my first question is the superhero question. Then, so if you're an ultra running superhero, what is your origin story? How did you get to where you are now? Go back as far as you like to sort of your introduction into trail running and ultra running and everything, and how you got to where you are now in the industry.
Sure. So thanks so much for having me on. As you said, it's been a long time coming, but yeah, great to be here and having a chat with you. Oh God, I actually, I think like everyone, I started in road running, unfortunately. So road running was my start, and God, it started. I was thinking about it actually the other day, and I started running way before Facebook was a thing. So a long time ago, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. So yeah, it's been a while. And it started with one of those, fun runs, what they like to call. It back in New Zealand when I was living in Auckland. It was an 8K run, and 2K into it, I thought I was gonna die because I was not a runner at that point. By 4K, I was sure I was dead, but I somehow managed to actually get to the end of it, and and basically that just ignited the bug, and I started running from there. My distances kind of progressed from that 8K to half marathon, and I probably spent 10 years running half marathons whilst I was living in New Zealand. And stupidly, most of my marathons were on road as a I didn't actually know about trail running until I left New Zealand in 2012, believe it or not. So yes, I missed out on the epic opportunity of actually enjoy beautiful running on trails in New Zealand. And yeah, I moved to London, decided to join road running club. Why not? So I did some more road running, but this time actually structured. So started doing a little bit more, um, yeah, structured training, organized races, stepped up to the to the marathon distance, started to chase the star. Uh, Ended up with only completing three because in 2020, when I was signed up to do Boston and New York, you know what happened. So nothing happened in 2020. And by the end of 2021, I kind of lost interest in road running. I was already doing a little bit of trail running, started doing some social runs outside of London on trails, really enjoy that. Always wanted to do an ultra. It was something that I had an interest in doing. For I had no idea for what reason, because I obviously wasn't a runner, was never really interested in long distances, but there was something very doing an ultra. I did read Dean Karnazes book, and I think that was like, I'm doing this one day. I need to do an ultra. So eventually, I did. And yeah, I just love trail running. So, I mean, I'm not a fast runner. I'm not very good at it, but I just thoroughly enjoy it, and it's my happy place. So yeah, I love doing it.
Mm. So you you say that your sort of beginnings were in New Zealand. So you kind of missed out on some classic trail running out there then, didn't you? By sort of not getting into trail running while you were out there.
I know, and literally ever since I've been kicking myself ever since I left there. And it's my ambition to go back there and do the Taravera ultra marathon there, which is going to be a lot more expensive now rather than if I live there. So that'll teach me.
Yeah, yeah, Tarawera. That's the one of the classics, isn't it, Tarawera?
Yeah.
Um, so what sort of led you to New Zealand then? So where do you originate from then? Where were you born?
So I was born in Czech Republic. Came to London, spent 5 years here, met a man, moved to New Zealand with him, spent 10 years there, left him there, came back. Then I went to France, then I came back to London, and now I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. So does this feel like home now? Have you been here long enough for it to feel like home?
It it does feel like home. Although I have to say, I for the last couple of years, I've really had itchy feet, and I'm dying to get out of London. So yeah, still the UK, but I think I've reached a point, hoping to move somewhere nicer and more greener.
Mm. Yeah, that is nice. London's not. I do like London, but yeah, I think I would feel eventually I'd feel a little bit trapped by it and need to get out into the countryside. So what's So your sort of your profession then. So I sort of found you on Instagram through our mutual friend Yugoku, and noticed that you were sort of into nutrition. What has been that? So is that something you've always done, or is this something new that you've started doing?
New. So actually, my background is in accounting, believe it or not, a really boring and uninspiring job, but that's something that I've been doing for most of my life. And I guess the nutrition side thing is only new. So I only started um, doing that when I moved to London back in 2012. I kind of started getting interested in that side of things purely for myself, really, because I'm a foodie. I love food. So that's one thing. And the other thing is when I started running and when I started training, I got really interested.
Okay, we're back. We're having technical issues. Not for the first time. So if we disappear, if our voices disappear, just bear with us, and we're hoping it's going to settle down. So, Zuzana, you were sort of saying how you got into you started out in accounting and you made your way into nutrition. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I'm actually still sort of dabbling in both, to be honest. So I have started my nutrition business, I think 3 years ago now. Um, so I've always been interested in nutrition, in food, and I really started studying it for myself. It was never, my intention to actually start a business, but as I sort of progressed through my studies, started talking to people in my running club and realizing how little people actually know about, nutrition and how to for running. I saw the potential in starting a business. So that's where that kind of, came into play. And yes, yeah, so still trying to develop that into sort of full-time thing because I would love to ditch the accounting and leave that behind. As I said, not very aspiring, but it is what it is. And yeah, I love the nutrition side of things. I do love working with people, helping them. It's always a two-way street for me, because you learn from people, and they help you then let things from different clients. So it's, it's always two-way street for me. So yeah, absolutely love that. Yeah, so more people I can help, the better, really.
So how does that sort of work in a practical way then if people sort of find you through socials and you got a website as well. So if people sort of find you on there, what approach do you take to sort of sorting people's nutrition out then? Do people come to you with like specific problems or they just want general help with race nutrition or in general nutrition?
I mean, in general, people come to me with something specific in mind, but then, once we get chatting, it might evolve into something different, because it's not always as straightforward as people think it's going to be. Often I find that people come to me looking for a magic bullet, and then we have a sort of a chat about it, and take a sort of more holistic long-term approach to things. So it might evolve. In saying that, I do work with some people where they just literally come to me and they say, I've got this race, I'd like you to look over it and just help me, fine tune it. And so we just have one-off session and we do that. And then I have people who come to me and they say, I've got a race coming up. These are all the things I've tried in the past. They've never worked for me. What am I doing wrong? Is there something you can help me with? And then, that may actually evolve into sort of more longer term sort of working relationship. And, it kind of starts looking at things outside of just the fueling for the specific race, but everything around it, what you're doing outside of your training, how you, bringing that in, making sure that it's actually working in your favor.
So sort of if people come to you and they've sort of say they've had issues with taking on energy in a race, what's your approach to that? If someone's one of the the classic thing with ultras is people suffering with gastrointestinal issues and GI issues, the classic GI issue, that's like the listed as like the number one thing for DNFing in a race, isn't it? So what's the approach that you take for somebody who keeps having trouble with those kind of issues in races?
Yeah, so always kind of have to start with looking at the past experience they've had. So looking at what type of fuel they're using, what nutrition they're using for their races. Looking at how they used it in training. Did they actually use it in training? Which is always the good one. And also when they used it in the training, did they use it intensity like they would in a race? So sometimes you say to people, did you use it in training? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I went on a 30-minute run and I had one gel. And you go like, okay, but you're going to do 50K, you're going to be running for 4.5 hours, you're going to be running much faster than what you did at the 30K. Did you use that in that specific setting? So rather than using a training run to use your nutrition, to test your nutrition, pick a race which is your B race or C race, and then be prepared to fail, be prepared that race because of your nutrition, but at least you will figure out what's going wrong, where is it going wrong, and then we can talk about it and figure out what we need to fine tune, what we need to tweak, what we need to take completely out, what do we need to put in, to make sure that you don't have those same issues. And it's going to be different things for different people. Some people, they can run 6 hours on gels and they'll be absolutely fine. Then you have people who, you put gel in front of them and that's it. That's the end of their race. They just absolutely cannot stomach that. And it's just individual. General, like, you might have people who will swear by a particular brand and they will not touch anything else because that particular brand really works for them. But you give that very same gel to someone else and they'll be like, no, absolutely cannot, stomach that.
Yeah, it's true that everything is everything's individual, isn't it? With that kind of thing. over the years, I've sort of tried different gels, different energy drinks and stuff, and there's some stuff that I know straight away. Even on like a training run that's just like an easy run, knowing that I'm having something, and the thing I'm specifically thinking of is tailwind. And then everyone had been raving about tailwind and how good it was, and you don't need anything else in your race, just literally just take tailwind. I was like, right, okay, brilliant, right, I got a load of tailwind and just tried it. And I was just doing it was just a road run of about 10 miles. I was like, right, I'll just start taking it. And straight away I knew that I was like, this is not for me. Just the taste of it. I was like, if I don't like the taste of it now, like sort of an hour in, then come like 5, 6 hours into an ultra, there's no way I'm going to be wanting to take that on. And if I've like put all my eggs in one basket and only using that form of energy like for the whole of my race, and I've stuffed myself up basically. So that sort of sent me on down a bit of a rabbit hole with trying and eventually I've come to the conclusion that I can't take on energy in fluids. So this is something that I've worked out over the years that it's gels, solid food, and then it is like just basically like either water or squash, like just like normal supermarket squash, like Ribena stuff like that, which I know will have some sugar in it. Um, but I think it's the combination of all the sugar and electrolytes and different flavorings and things that don't really sit quite right with me. But then, like you say, everyone's an individual, aren't they?
Absolutely. And I think this is the key. Like, what you did is the perfect thing. Like, you try it, it doesn't work for you, you ditch it, you move on to something else. And I think that, social media have got a lot to answer for, where, people are very easily influenced, by what other people are doing. And they sort of think, well, this is a gospel. If, you know, Kylian Jornet is doing this, I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to have exactly the same performance and because firstly he is extraordinary, so you will not have the same performance as him. But also, he's a separate person, different body. His systems work completely differently, and it just because it works for him doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It might, but if it doesn't, move on, try something different.
Mm. Have you sort of found that your sort of own racing experience is sort of has it has it come in handy with this kind of thing, or is it a bit of a hindrance with your own? Because when you're coaching people, you've got to be careful, haven't you? You don't sort of because everybody's different that you don't give your sort of personal experience and say, "Oh, you should try this because it works for me," which is like the classic mistake that all coaches make, isn't it? That this worked for me, so it must work for you. Or one size fits all. But are there some things that you can that from your experience that is applicable to most people? Do you think?
Um, Not really, and I would honestly never say to someone, you should try this. I would say to them, these are the products that I have tried and tested and they work for me. But if you find that there's something, I always give them options for similar products. So these are the ones that I've tried and tested. They work for me. I know that, if I use them at this stage in the race, they work for me. But it's not necessarily going to work for you. So I work with what people are already using and figuring out, finding out from them, from the stuff they're already using, what is working for them and what is not working from them, and then we try to complement. So obviously leave in what's already working and just try and substitute the stuff that isn't working. And sometimes it's not even the product of when they're actually taking the fuel on. Are they thinking about it? Are they starting to take it on too late in the race? And it just spirals from that. So I think for me, what applies and what I try to say to all my athletes is just eat enough, and that should be like the basic requirement. Don't worry about, am I eating enough protein? Am I eating enough carbs? Am I eating enough fat? Because if you're not eating enough, full stop, you're not having enough carbs, you're not having enough protein, and you're not having enough fat. So start with the basic training, and then we can start fine tuning it and making sure that yes, you are having the right amount of carbs, you are having the right amount of protein for again, for you and for the sport you're doing, etc., etc.
Is there sort of some like quite easy calculations that runners can make sort of without going too in depth into like macros and is it just basically just working out, figuring out how many calories a run is gonna take and making sure you've got those available calories sort of on hand in your day? Do you sort of encourage people to sort of preload with calories, or is it sort of just making sure that at the end of the day you're having enough to cover the daily activity plus your workout?
I think one thing that I try to stay away from is people focusing too much on calories, and how many calories they should be taking in, and more focusing on the quality of food and the type of foods they're eating. Because you can be talking 2,000 calories in
Mm.
chocolate, and you could be talking 2,000 calories in chicken breasts,
Yeah.
vegetables, fruit, whatever. And it's not that one is bad and one's more about if you want to have a good performance, you have to have a balance, right, in life. So you need to make sure that you're spreading your meals across the day. So not just eating massive breakfast, then not having anything for hours, and then having a large meal at night, and then again not having anything, and going out and exercising first thing in the morning without having anything, then not having anything for hours after your session. So teaching people good habits, really, like eating evenly. And then when you get into details, when you're helping someone train for specific event, then you're teaching them or showing them what's the best way to eat before your session, what kind of sessions you're having. Are you having easy session? How much should you eat before that? Or what kind of food should you eat? Not necessarily how much. And I think that helps people sort of develop good habits around how they should be feeding themselves around training and in general life as well, rather than saying rigidly you need to have 5,000 calories, and it has to be you know 7 chickens and 5,000 eggs, whatever, was exaggerating. I think people don't stick with that. People don't. So difficult for people to sit there and calculate every day, and you can get too hung up on it as well. And obviously, often people forget that if you stress at work, your body burns more calories. If you're not sleeping well, again, your body needs more calories to overcome that stress. And I think your body and your energy levels should be your guide, whether you're eating enough or not. Because if you're constantly tired, and then you think about, well, what did I eat today? And you start thinking about it, you probably can pretty quickly work out that you're not actually eating enough food for all the activities you're trying to do.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, what's your sort of take on, a while back, a few years ago, that was all the focus for racing was about calories. And I always struggled with trying to figure out, how many calories work for me per hour and stuff. Um, but lately it's sort of gone more towards like grams of carbs per hour, hasn't it? So this sort of ceiling that they've got is it like 100 or 120 grams that the people have managed to push up to in races? Is that am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I think it's just going higher and higher, isn't it? It kind of started with 40 grams, 60 grams, 65, 70, 90, 100. And yes, some athletes obviously, seem to have pushed it even sort of further. And I think it depends on the sport as well. It's probably there's a difference between being set on the bike and what you can consume while you're on the bike and whilst you're running, because obviously the yeah, the movement,
Mm.
as you're bouncing up and down as you're running, that obviously has some limitations on how your digestive system is working. Whereas when you're, on a bike, your digestive system is able to cope with intake of food quite differently. Um, And again, it just comes down, again, it's very individual. It comes down to trying it and training your gut, just as you training your muscles and your mind. You have to train your gut to be able to actually cope with that amount of carbohydrate coming in, and being able to digest it and actually use it and be helpful. Because if your body can't deal with it, then it's just going to shut down and your race is over.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that's something I've tried to sort of work on over the years is that, for a long time I sort of took like a bit of a low carb approach to sort of, I brought into the whole low carb and burning fat and everything. And it does work. But also I've recognized that it also down regulates your ability to be able to handle carbs as well, because obviously your digestive system gets used to certain types of fuels. So something I've been trying myself this year since I've gone out of like the spine phase of training, which was all really long and slow, and I could eat a roast dinner while I was hiking along. It was such like low speeds and everything. But I've kind of started to go back towards what I used to do, which was sort of, shorter, faster stuff. So I've kind of started to bring that back in of like training, actually properly training with nutrition. So rather than, in years gone by, I would sort of only sort of take like a gel with me or two gels with me if I was running like a 20 mile, like a weekend long run.
Oh,
And I've kind of come away from that now to the point where if I'm going over an hour, I will take gels with me and I'll make sure that I use them. But I'm still in this routine, and I don't know whether it is psychological, but from the days where I was low carb, I did used to use gels, but I would only use them after an hour of running. And I still have this sort of like mental block of using a gel before the hour mark. So because I've also had experiences that I thought have gone badly, and I wasn't sure if they were connected. So on I'm doing the spine sprint this coming weekend, Saturday, and the first time I did that was a few years ago, the first time they did it, and I was having like GI issues before I'd even reached 10 miles. And then so I know something was wrong because there's no way I should be having issues with my stomach like 10 miles into a 40 plus mile race. And I don't know where I'm going with this story. Talking about gels. But yeah, the point I was trying to make is that you, you train, like you say, you train your body to run. You can train your gut, and I thought that my gut probably wasn't as trainable as I thought it was. But as I've been training this sort of last few blocks, I've been introducing gels, and also almost at the point of taking them before I think I should be having them. So um, those gels are the precision hydration ones are like 30 grams of carbs, and I've managed to get myself up to, but this isn't long term. This is only sort of like I've used it for a couple of hours and managed to use 90 grams for 2 hours. And for me, that's like massive because before I would only sort of be using like 30 to maybe 60 maximum, something like that. So being able to get 90 grams in. But again, it's still not really, this isn't tried and tested for me. It's kind of like a bit of it, not that it's a new area taking gels in a race because I've done it for
yeah.
years, but trying to push. And you hear stories like you say, like it seems to be there's a lot of talk in the minute about grams of carbs per hour and pushing that ceiling and trying to get 90, 100 over 100. Um, where do you think the sort of ceiling is for that? Are there any studies that have shown how far people have actually pushed that?
Um, Not entirely sure, to be honest with you, because I think with these sort of things, it's still kind of an outlier for someone to be able to push it that high. I mean, it's everyday person is not really going to be able to push the consumption that high. quite challenging as it is. And you have to, like, you have to be training really hard and be in that sort of, almost elite level,
Mm.
and have all the support, not just for the nutrition, but everything with it, to be able to actually fully test that. Because as an amateur runner, when will you have the opportunity to be training, for a training block like that, having
Mm.
the luxury of doing it like that, to be able to, then utilize 120 grams, of carbs. I think it's not going to be for everyone. It's
Mm.
just for a select few people who are really going to be able to push those sort of boundaries. And I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to be pushing it that far. If you get your nutrition right for you,
Mm.
it doesn't have to be 120 grams, of carbohydrate per hour. It just needs to be the right amount for you. And that's, again, it's not going to suit everyone. So I wouldn't be getting too hung up about that.
Mm. Yeah, and it also depends on the weather as well, doesn't it? With that kind of thing can affect like if it's hot, if it's cold, that can affect how much you can take.
Absolutely. Gender differences, women, obviously digest carbs differently to men. So, we can digest at a different rate than men can digest. Obviously, it comes to, how much muscle you have as well, because obviously how much glycogen you can store, the more muscle you have, the more glycogen you can store. So there's all these variations. There's obviously age as well. For women, it's even, the cycle, the menstrual cycle, that will affect that as well. So there are so many variables to it that include, are you running flat race? Are you running in hot conditions? Are you running in mountainous, really hilly, technical terrain? Everything comes into play.
Mm. Yeah, and I suppose also um, now there's this extra doubt about how many carbs we are actually getting now, getting onto the spring energy subject. Um, so I know I'd imagine that most people have sort of seen it because it's been sort of all over social media, hasn't it? This it started off as like I first saw it as like a bit of a meme on one of the ultra running meme pages where they were going on about awesome sauce and and I'd not really cottoned on to sort of the how serious it was. But for for the listener, if they if if you're not on social media and you don't know the sort of the backstory of it, basically Spring Energy in the US have got a a gel which I need to look at the numbers. It's called Awesome Sauce. I took a photo of the Iron Far, did all the tests on it,
Hmm.
um, and they claimed that the gel had 180 calories and it contained this is in a 54-gram packet and it contained 45 grams of carbs. And somebody on Reddit sort of did like a basic dehydration test and figured out that there's no way that physically on Earth that those numbers add up. It can't be right that something that weighs 54 grams can, when it's dry, could have 45 grams of carbs. So they were sort of coming out with they worked it out to like being about 18 or something, didn't they? But um Iron Fast sent them away for so a few people sent them off to labs to be checked, didn't they? So Jason Coop from the Coop cast, the infamous coach from the US, he had someone connected with them, Sport Hunger, a German company. Um, that was they sent some off for testing, and then Iron Far sent them off. And basically, the all said and done, it seems that the claimed 45 grams of carbs actually the most that they got was 18 grams of carbs, and some of the other tests got as low as 12 grams. So it's quite a big discrepancy, isn't it? And the one that was 12 grams came in at 53 calories. So literally, it's that's almost like a quarter of the calories, isn't it?
Yeah,
If you rounded up to 200 and rounded that down, it's nearly just like a quarter of the calories, and the same with the grams as well, with the carbs as well.
yeah.
What's your sort of um what's been your take on it all?
Well, I mean, I think, disappointing really, because, for me, I mean, I've used Spring Energy myself. Um, I actually used the awesome sauce just this weekend and laughing about it, thinking, well, this is going to make me a fat adapted runner, isn't it? Knowing now, what I didn't know before. Um, yeah, I think disappointing because you sort of, I mean, I always held Spring Energy in a high regard as one of the, better brands. And, what the thing that appealed to me about this particular product was natural ingredients. Okay, that's something that I wanted, something I was looking for in a gel. And then absolutely the fact that it had 45 grams of carbs per that little packet, because that's very important from a logistics point of view when you're running a long race and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get all the carbohydrates that you're planning on taking, and you want to carry as little as possible, so you want a gel that punches quite a lot of grams of carbohydrate. Race one, awesome sauce was always something that I was like, okay, I've got this and one of these to make up the difference. So obviously, um, that was the reason why I was using them. And then you have, obviously you're paying a premium price, so it's not like it was a cheap product. So again, you're expecting that a company that is charging you a premium price has got processes in place to ensure that the quality of product is assured. um, and obviously, something went terribly wrong there, because obviously doesn't seem to be the case. We hear so much about low energy availability and how athletes are under fueling, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. And this is prevalent not just amongst runners, but other sports as well. And it affects both men and women, but in particular women. And I think for me, as a when I work with my clients, I always drill it into my clients. You have to test your fueling in racing, so in training you have to make sure that it's working for you. So so there's lots of athletes using awesome sauce, and I bonked and my race was over, and it's like, well, how much did you actually use it in your training? Because you should have had an indication that using awesome sauce wasn't giving you enough energy, and so you should have been dealing with that. So I'm not necessarily buying that. But on the other hand, there's lots of women who are running, and their goal isn't performance, their goal is losing weight. And they're using awesome sauce, and they taking 180 calories, they finishing their runs, they feel tired, but more on their next run because they worried about taking on more calories, right? So it's quite irresponsible that they actually thinking they're taking double of the calories on, whereas they would have been doing all this training quite underfueled, and not correcting it because they worried about the calories intake. So that's probably the sort of, yeah, quite worrying side.
Yeah, it is worrying. Somebody brought up on, I was listening to a podcast and they were sort of saying, um, you can sort of see the side of it, people being annoyed that they weren't getting the calories that they thought they were getting, and the carbs they were getting. But they brought up the point that some runners are diabetic and they rely on gels for like guaranteed sugar. But then I suppose that same really applies to that they would know that the blood sugar levels would react better to certain gels. So I suppose sort of blaming them for people having issues with diabetic issues that don't really stand up either. Um, what do you think the sort of long-term damage will be um, to the company? Do you think they can sort of come back from this now?
I mean, I don't even know that they actually put out a proper statement to actually say what they're doing. Apparently, they said obviously they eventually took the product off their website and they did sort of came up with some lame explanation of faulty batch or whatever that you want to call, which because it's from these sort of few tests that various people have done. They impact different batches and also different gels from
Mm.
Spring Energy as well. And I think if it was purely just isolated one batch of a product, then you can forgive them for okay, something went horribly wrong. This one batch needed to be recalled, and we just all move on. I think people would have been a lot more forgiving. I think the fact that you're paying premium price for what essentially is baby food. I think lots of people would be quite annoyed about that, and I think it's going to take quite a lot for Spring Energy to just build a trust again. Because to be fair, like I have absolutely no complaints about the awesome sauce taste. It's I love it. Like even I was having it on the weekend, as I said, and I was thinking I love this product. Honestly, I can say that it tastes good. It tastes like apple pie to me, and that's what I enjoyed about it. It's just a shame that it isn't what it says on the packet.
Mm. Yes, it's annoying because that is that's their selling point, isn't it? That everybody says that their gels taste really nice and they appreciate the fact that they're using all natural products that go into it. But I also heard Jason Coop did a podcast with a guy. I can't remember the name of the company now, but it's a gel like an energy company, and they use maple syrup as their like base for all their products. I can't remember the name of them now. Um, but he was sort of quizzing him about the processes that they have, and he was sort of saying that there's certain tests that they do, with like hydrometers. Can't remember what it is like that test the amount of sugar in the solution, and there's like legislation over there for how much sugar needs to be in that product for it to be classed as maple syrup, pure maple syrup. Um, so he was sort of saying that it seems like they've done it deliberately because it's the kind of thing that would come up in testing. It's not there's no two ways about it. They've somebody's missed it and they've let it slide, or they know they've done it and they've done it purposely to sort of cut down margins. Um, and like you say, when they sort of came up with lame excuses about saying, "Oh, it's certain batches have been tested in this one batch," but that's fair enough. But when you've got three different people testing things like in three different places in the world, and they're all coming up with the same numbers, then yeah, it's not quite. There's something fishy going on.
Yeah, it almost feels like they didn't actually have the quality controls in place, full stop, and that's why they didn't, they either knew about it or they about it because obviously batches, it costs money, right? The more
Mm.
controls you put in place, the more expensive it is. So therefore, it's obviously eating into your profits. So whether they decided they're not going to do that because they trusted, that they're getting it right,
Mm.
and maybe it is just unfortunate that they were not actually getting it right, but they would have known because of the cost margin. I'm an accountant, so from that perspective, if you're all of a sudden having massive profits because you're using less ingredient, then it's costing you less to make the gel, right? So it's like someone must have known something
Mm.
along the lines. So yeah, it's really disappointing because yeah, it doesn't just yeah, it just doesn't hold that. It was just one batch that, you know, had inconsistent ingredient in it. Um, you know, you could again argue if it was, you know, 10% less or something, you would go like, okay, maybe the apples were off this year. But it just doesn't, you know, to have such a massive variance. It's almost feels like it was deliberately diluted to, you know, to make it go a longer way.
Yeah, because I think when we talk about the percentage that they can, I think it's 20%, isn't it? So it can either be, say if a gel is like 100, supposed to be 100 calories, and it comes out as 110 or 90 or 120 or 80, that's like the allowable amount. But when it's like almost a quarter of what's stated on the, and that's, you know, that's kind of pushing it a bit too far into it. And then it wasn't just that one gel, was it? It was a number of their gels were tested, weren't there? And at the same time, I think if it was Jason Cooper or if no, it was the Iron Far people, that they sent off a load of other
Yeah,
gels at the same time to get them tested. So Honey Stinger, um, and Go, Morton, Precision Hydration, SIS, and they're all within like a couple of like grams here and there or a couple of calories. So they're pretty much bang on what they say they are. Um, there's no sort of massive discrepancy between what's stated and actually what is, what actually is in there. Um, do you think is this going to make us, start questioning everything we sort of take on board now, or do you think we just sort of have to trust the nutrition companies to do what's right?
yeah. I mean, I guess from my perspective, I would, because you know it's just one of those things, isn't it? But we don't have control over the processes, over the manufacturing processes. So you know you kind of you want to trust that the companies are doing the right thing. And the only way to know if they are doing the right thing or not is just, you know, seeing how you respond to those products when you're using them in racing, when you're using them in training, you know, and seeing, am I getting the energy that I'm expecting to be getting so many gels, and I'm, you know, I'm not feeling the energy that I'm expecting to feel after I've had them, you know. So you have to be sort of tuning in to your own body, I think, a little bit, and trusting yourself rather than the product a little bit more. So not
Mm.
taking it as a gospel that it says it's got 60 grams of carbs, therefore it does, but actually going, it might do, but I'm not feeling like it does. So, you know, do I need to supplement with something else just to make sure that I'm getting all the sort of carbs that I need to be getting?
Yeah, so it comes back to your original point of training with a product and making sure that you've used it in your training and making sure you've used it in B races so that um you know that it will work come race day, because you should be finding these issues way before race day. So it's kind of the onus is on you to sort of do more trial and error, as it were.
Yeah, and also, you know, also you have to understand that even if you tried a product in training under exact conditions, they might still not work on the day. And it's not because the product is off, but it's because you are off for whatever reasons, you know, whether it's because you had too much stress in life, whether something just doesn't, you know, align for you on the day. And no nutrition in the world is going to save that race for you, even if it's exactly spot on. It's just going to be something else. And you know, it's just fact of racing. Sometimes you just have to accept that and just move on, you know, and don't blame the product necessarily.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, everyone has good days and bad days, don't they? But what's your sort of so for somebody sort of listening to this, watching this podcast, wanted to sort of have a sort of a some takeaway points about how to improve their sort of racing nutrition. What simple things can you sort of say now to listeners that try this first, try that first, just like a basic thing for them, rather than thinking, do I need to hire a nutrition, experts? Is there things that you can sort of say, try this, quite simple things?
Yeah, I think, you know, try different products. There are many products on the market that have been developed specifically for for various sports, obviously for runners and cyclists and swimmers and whatnot. So think about what is your preferred flavor. Try products that you like the taste of, because if you like the product, then you are likely to want to use it and use it consistently. Test it in training, and actually write down after your training run, how did I feel, after taking that product, um, how did I feel taking a different product, because then you can try and draw some comparisons, um, and try different forms of fuel as well. So are gels good for you? Is real food better for you? Are liquid calories better for you? Just try and work out what works for you. And probably rule number one: don't copy someone else. It doesn't matter what is using. It may not work for you. By all means, try it if you want to, but don't take it as a rule that just because it works for someone else, it is going to work for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's as with most things in ultra running and trail running, everything's on an individual basis, isn't it? That you've what works for your friend doesn't work for you necessarily. And same with all the choices we have in ultra running. Different choices of shoes and kit and everything like that. So and that's the fun part about it, is trying new things. It's expensive, but it's fun.
Exactly, I think so. And you don't have to rely on just one product either. Like for myself, I love to have like a range of products. So I'm not, I've got preferred products that I use for my training, for my races, but I will always have different things in the mix as well, because I know that there will be a point, especially if it's a long race, there will be a point in time where I will not even want to hear the name of that product, let alone trying to digest it. So and it's good to have those different options and know that there are multiple products that actually work for you, whether it's different types of gels, different flavors of gels, or just mixing up gels, liquid calories with, sweet, savory. Just, have a picnic out there, but just make sure that you've tested everything and that you are comfortable that, it's going to be something that's going to work for you.
Mm. Yeah, excellent. That's great. So takeaway points are: try everything, try it in your training, try it in your racing, and yeah, keep it keep it interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a basic, isn't it? Really, obviously, when it comes to wanting to improve your performance, if someone is really looking at, you've got different complete, and then you have people who run to compete, right? And then you have the middle pack as well. So different things are going to apply to different people. So obviously, as you start getting to the sort of top 5%, top 2%, those people are really looking at gaining, those margins, wherever they can get them, whether it's through gear, whether it's through nutrition. So I wouldn't be saying to those people, just go and try anything and everything. Obviously, I would be working with them quite specifically on what they're already doing and how we can refine it, because there's probably something that we can do to squeeze even more. you know if you are someone who is there to complete, not to compete, then the emphasis on the nutrition is not doesn't need to be quite as precise. You just need to make sure that they are getting enough to get them through the race comfortably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with the listeners and the viewers. Where do you want to sort of direct people to sort of come and find out what you're about then? So best thing to do is, if they're interested in hiring your services as a nutritional coach, what's the best thing to do? Like find you on Instagram, find you on Facebook, or just go direct to your website?
Probably Instagram is probably the best. And they drill into my sort of profile links, they will find a link to my website as well if they wanted to see the sort of services that I offer. But I'm always open to working with people specifically on whatever it is they need. So if there isn't anything on my website that they feel is relevant to them or they want something different, I'm always happy to have a chat and see what we can, come up with. But yeah, I would say Instagram. Yeah, so they can
Brilliant.
follow me.
Right, I'll direct people to that, and I'll put that in the show notes. So,
Thank you.
thank you so much for coming on, Zuzana. Appreciate you giving up your time and having a chat with us. Thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.